Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another marketing meetup and the start of a new season on strategy and planning. We are about six-ish weeks from 2025, and so we wanted to help you all get ready for next year with a solid session on strategy. Now, before we kick off the session, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping. The regulars will know this one quite well, but you need to change your settings so that everyone can see your comments, not just hosts and panelists. So if you can change the little blue toggle in the chat section, then everyone will be able to see where you are listening in from. And look at that, we've got Folkestone, Lincoln, Manchester, Leicester, Columbia. Goodness me, hello from Columbia. That's exciting. Fife, Bristol. Oh, it goes on and on. It's lovely to have you all here. So on to our guest today. Some of you might know him. His name's Joe Glover, and before Joe did the job of running the marketing meetup with me, he was a marketing manager, fighting for budget, trying to justify his role in this world and his ideas as well. And he was generally learning on the fly. Many years later, Joe has the experience of building lots of strategies, including the one we've built for the marketing meetup. And today's presentation is going to be talking about the basics of what a marketing strategy is and how those fundamentals can be applied to any business using some examples to take you through. Joe is a thoroughly generous guy, as we all know, and his knowledge is worth following on LinkedIn. So if you don't follow him already, then I highly recommend it. And in fact, this QR code here will take you to a kind of update that he's got. So I think you'll enjoy that. So during the session, I also must point out that we've got the chat function that's firing up really nicely. If you want to ask Joe questions, we'll do those after the presentation, and put those in the Q&A, and we will take the most upvoted questions from the Q&A to answer at the end. Now, a lot of you will know as well that the way these sessions run is because we have wonderful partners. And these special brands allow us to bring all these amazing talks and resources to you for free. And so today I wanted to give a special shout out to our friends at Storyblock. Storyblock is a headless CMS for companies needing custom website designs, but who also want a lot of control over how and where their content appears. And they have a series of free webinars coming up. Marketing is moving and changing all the time, and these webinars are about the importance of evolving. And so if that sounds interesting to you, scan that QR code. I keep pointing the wrong way. And we'll send that link as well in the follow-up email. But I'd also like to say a quick thank you to our other friends at Frontify, Exclaimer, Cambridge Marketing College, Planable, Redgate, and ScoreApp. So that is my very rough introduction done. Joe, my old friend, have you got any knowledge for us that you could share with this wonderful community?
I will try my best. What's been really lovely already in the chat is that I don't usually get the opportunity to interact as I have. So hello, everyone. It's so lovely to be speaking with you today, and I hope I can help. And Jessica, yes, that was a Rickroll in the QR code. I'm glad we got a couple of people. So it's such a pleasure, and let's get going with how to build their minimum marketing strategy. And to do so, we're going to start with a bit of a story. Now, this story takes us back to the year 2016, where I was a solo marketer working in a small company. And in 2016, this was the moment that I hit my my marketing rock bottom. I was driving through the hills of Ireland, although it looked a little bit more like this because it was a horrendously rainy day. I was sat in the driver's seat with my boss at the time, sat in the passenger seat. And I remember turning to my boss while driving through these hills and saying these words, which is, I don't know how we're going to get to where we want to, what we're doing doesn't seem to be landing, and we have a communication problem. And I don't want to trivialize these problems because, like, on a very emotional level, I remember sitting at my desk in that particular role and feeling pretty lost. I had a sense that I just wasn't delivering what I was supposed to be, but no real idea whether or not that was correct. I was unsure what I should be doing next. I was a little bit fearful and definitely anxious. And I'm not really sure that I had the trust or buy-in from my team. So, it's one of those wild situations that, again, I just want to sit on for a minute because I think so often when our marketing work isn't going the way that we do, then it can have a very real emotional response as well as a business response to the work that we're doing. Now, the thing that I was lacking in that moment was this word, this concept, this idea of having a strategy. And for me, over the course of time, a great strategy has fundamentally left me moving from a place of feeling lost to giving purpose and clarity on what we should be saying and to whom. A sense of under delivering, but nothing to benchmark against, and all of a sudden giving me goals and a way to communicate with the team. And when I'm unsure what the next move was, I've now got a framework for my decision making and prioritization of action. James knows that I love a framework, which is been endlessly useful. We've got Amanda in the chat right now, sort of saying preach. So I'm sorry that that's your situation right now, but we'll get there. We'll hopefully explain over the course of the rest of this chat how we can build a strategy that hopefully alleviates some of these feelings. But if we're speaking about strategy, then we at least need to have a little bit of a common understanding of what one is. And so we can look at it in two different ways. So this is a quote from Michael Porter, who says, strategy is choosing what not to do. And I think that's quite informative because quite a lot of folks will sort of say, this is a strategy will tell us what to do. But I think a great strategy also gives us the ability to say no to things. And I think that's really, really important in an industry that, quote unquote, moves so fast. A different way of thinking about it is a very simplified version by Mark Ritson, who says, who are we going to target? What is our position to that target? And what is my objective to those people? Mark sort of speaks about that very clearly as three key components of building a great strategy. So how do we build the minimum version, which is what we're hopefully going to approach today. And again, just picking up on the chat comments, we've got Teresa saying my solo marketing job nearly made me quit marketing altogether. Hopefully we're going to save a few more people today. So how do we build the minimum version? We're going to approach this talk in four parts. The first is I'm going to introduce you to the bare minimum strategy. The second phase is to introduce you to the example that we're going to work through today, because I've built an example to hopefully bring the strategy to life. We're then going to work through the strategy itself and the example. So hopefully you get this idea of how to do it. And then we're going to talk through your questions. And I've already said to James that I'm happy to stay here and answer as many questions as possible, so long as we're not overlapping and sort of repeating ourselves. So do get your questions in using the Q&A feature if you would like to. There's a question in the chat asking whether we'll be sharing the slides, and we will be. So part one, let's introduce you to the bare minimum marketing strategy and what it looks like. Here it is. This is the bare minimum marketing strategy. So this will also be released as a podcast after today. So I'm just going to speak through it very, very quickly. At the top, we have a business or marketing goal. In the middle layer, we have a problem that we solve, who we're trying to solve it for, and the idea that we would like to build them in their brain. Then we've got the tactical elements, which are awareness, consideration, purchase, retention, and advocacy. This is the tactical elements of the bare minimum strategy. And James, I can read the chat and read the slides just because I've got lots of practice. So let's get going and break this down. So the first thing we're going to speak about is a business and marketing goal. And this is basically what we see. It it's a fairly self-explanatory idea. It's Ron Seal. It says what it is on the tin. We're then going to go into these diagnosis and strategic elements. So diagnosis and strategy is what Mark Ritson would talk about. This is his model, and I need more than a little hat tip to Mark Ritson when I'm speaking about the bare minimum strategy, because a lot of the ideas are built on his. Diagnosis simply means to understand the target market or the market as a whole, and then strategic is answering those questions that we spoke about. And then finally, we'll cover these tactical stuff, which again is this third phase. Now, I presented this bare minimum strategy last year, and I think there was a bit of an advance that I can give on this bare minimum strategy since then, which is that a strategy does not sit in a silo. I really need to put a big warning on the bare minimum strategy here, that it is not your job to go away and build a strategy and then walk back to the team and go, ta-da. This strategy has to be built with the involvement of the rest of your team, the stakeholders, and is really your opportunity to really bring in the rest of their company to help them understand your marketing efforts. I feel really quite passionate that marketing should not be done in a silo. We need the involvement of the rest of our teams, the rest of the organization. And with that in mind, I think I really just need to make a point here that we do not and we cannot do our bare minimum strategy by ourselves. We need to involve the rest of the company. So please do. Ian, no origami with my feet, my friend, I promise. So there's some assumptions when we go through the bare minimum strategy. We want to be able to easily articulate what we want to do. The product and pricing are probably already fixed. Now, this is really important because this is the difference between the bare minimum strategy and a full marketing strategy. A marketer would probably have, in an ideal world, would have a lot of involvement in the product and the pricing, etc. But what we're doing here is putting together a very quick version that realistically represents a lot of situations for a lot of marketers. So we probably have a product and the pricing idea that is already fixed, or the company is already doing these things and we're coming in to help. And I will absolutely acknowledge that this ignores a lot of nuance in the marketing world. I've really tried to strip things back. So this is just an ask to not come at me too hard if I'm missing something. So part two, we've spoken about the bare minimum strategy. I've given you a preview of what it looks like. Let's introduce you to an example so that we can ground this strategy today in something which is a little bit more relatable. So I'd like to introduce you to ABC Limited. It's a very imaginative name. It's run by Mavis and Bob. Mavis and Bob run a small e-commerce business in their spare time, selling high-quality designer petwear. It's sold on the basis of the product, i.e. they sort of speak about their product, not in terms of sort of saying the benefits, but they sort of they describe the product as high-quality designer petwear. It's been established for about 2 years, but now they're looking for some marketing support. And currently, they do the thing which a lot of marketers will fear is that they currently sell to everybody, or in this case, all pet owners. Haters may say that the dog is AI. Haters may say there is quite a lot of AI imagery in this presentation. The important thing in this example is I don't want you to get too hung up that this is an e-commerce example, that this is a B2C example. The bare minimum strategy will absolutely work in a B2B context. It will work in smaller businesses. And after I presented this last year, I got in touch, quite a few people got in touch and said, you know what, this is actually needed in an awful lot of larger businesses right now. Yes, Mike, even B2B to C to B to B to C. So let's walk through the bare minimum strategy so we can give you, right, you can all stop with your acronyms now. Let's go through the strategy step by step so we can see how we can build this strategy for ABC Limited. There you go, I'm doing my own acronyms now. So let's start with the business or marketing goal. Now, when we announced this talk via the Marketing Meetups LinkedIn page yesterday, we encouraged folks to ask questions. And this one came in from Pietro, who asked whether marketing strategy makes no sense if it's not correlated with a business strategy and sales and delivery. And I think this is a really important point when we're coming to the idea of where we're taking our goals from. A marketing goal is fundamentally there to serve a business goal. And I think this is a really important point to make, particularly when we're coming from the idea of collaboration with the rest of our teams. It's for us to go up to our MDs, our CEOs, our line managers, etc., and we need to be asking what the business needs. In a smaller business, it may well be that a business goal is directly related to the marketing goal, but it may not be. So we need to be starting to ask these questions to ask, what is the goal of the company? Now, the difficulty is that so often when we ask people for a goal, they start doing statements like this. They start saying stuff like, we just need to, get ourselves out there, or we need to do some social media or something. And I'd be interested in the chat if there's anyone who sort of relates to being given a marketing task and sort of being given this as a goal. I'm getting some yeses, so that's good. Teresa says flashback of trauma. I'm sorry, I hope it's not that bad. So instead, what we want to do is, in this case, in the case of the bare minimum strategy, ask folks for something which relates something to a SMART goal. Now, there's so many different goal setting methodologies out there, and I'm not saying that a SMART goal is the be all end all, but what I am trying to say is that we want to be able to set ourselves an idea of moving from something to something else. So we have a beginning state and then we have an end state for our activity. In the case of a SMART goal, we are setting a goal that is specific, it's measurable, so we know whether we've been successful or not. Ambitious, so we're stretching ourselves, it's relevant to the business, and it's got a time relation at the end. So as an example, we want to get ourselves out there is, a terrible goal. It's not a goal, it's a statement. But what we could say instead is, from our current place of 100 visits to our website per day, move this number to 1,000 by the 17th of November. Immediately, we're getting a lot of specificity into what we need to achieve. Similarly, a goal which is stated as, do some social media could move to have 80 ideal conversations with our customers via LinkedIn by the end of the year. Or if we want to sell more tickets, it could be increased conversion rate on our website from 1 to 2% by June 2023, etc., etc. So what we can see is we've got some specificity to our goal. Now, there's some watch outs for our goal setting right from the beginning in three different ways. The first is the sales element of it. The second is not what I wanted. And the third is too many. So let's speak about the first, which is the sales. We all want to sell more. That's what businesses are there for in the 90% of cases. We all want to sell more things. But when stating the objective of getting a train from Cambridge to Edinburgh, we need to, the end goal is not necessarily to get the train to Edinburgh. There are a series of steps that will take us to that eventual goal, like buy a ticket, get to the train station, get on the train, change at Peterborough, etc., etc. We all want to have sales, but as a marketing goal, it's important to break down the goals that sit before the sale so we can understand the things that we need to be doing to get along the way. Secondly, not what we wanted. This is, again, a reinforcement of the point that we don't want to be setting our goal ourselves. We need to be going to the people who have a significant stakeholding over what we're doing as a marketing activity and asking them questions. What are your main activities for the business this year? What challenges are we currently facing? What would you like to be seen or improved or changed? And can you provide specific examples of desired incomes? If people don't have answers for these things, and often our bosses won't, then we can help them on the journey of discovering these things, Like it can be an act of generosity and a great way to get buy-in if you are part of the process of setting the overall business goal. And the last watch out is too many. I think for the most part, if you can set one or two objectives that you can reasonably hold yourself up against for your marketing activity for a set period, then I think ultimately you're setting yourself a focus for your activity. If you're ending up with 5, 6, 7, 8 objectives for your activity, particularly if you're in a small team, then I think fundamentally your messaging is going to get confused and you are probably going to end up prioritizing some of those objectives over others. So try, if you can, to bring your business or marketing goal down to one. So let's speak about today's example. We've got a business goal of growing profit by 10% from, so this is the goal that Mavis and Bob have decided, which is they would like their business to grow 10% from £100,000 to £110,000 by the 31st of December. They would like to grow profit 10%. Now, as a marketing team, there's lots of possible ways to do this. We could choose to sell more to the customers we already have. We could sell orders at a higher value. But what we've actually chosen as our marketing goal after much discussion is to create 50 net new customers at an average profit value of £200 by the 31st of December 2025. And so that now sits at the top of our marketing strategy. We know we have a clear goal at the top. So now we have a goal, we can move into the strategic elements of the bare minimum strategy. So here we're looking to solve a problem. This problem can be agnostic to the product that you sell. We're not going in immediately and sort of saying, this is the problem we solve. Here we're looking to understand the market and the people in it and the behaviors that they exhibit, so we can eventually look to understand how we can sell our product to them. Now, the really, really important thing to emphasize at this point is this is their problem. This is the market's problem that you're looking to solve. It's not your problem. Mark Ritson will quite regularly say that the second you walk into an organization and you become the marketing manager at that team, then you are the least qualified person to understand what the market want, because you immediately become too close to it. I have a little bugbear in this, and I don't know whether this is just me, but I get a little bit annoyed when I see people sort of saying like, we're excited to announce, or we're excited to launch, or whatever it may be. Because at the end of the day, I think it's about understanding why the customer should be excited, understanding why your product or service will improve their life. And so yeah, Liz says I'm not alone. You know, I don't want to pick on people, so I don't want to overblow that, but it's just an example that really we need to be thinking about solving the need for someone else, not for yourself. And how do you establish that? How do you find out these things? Well, the first is you can ask your customers. You can go out and just say, you know, what's going on in your world? A very, very low cost way of finding out what people want. The second is you can observe people in their natural environment. So we call this ethnographic research. So you can just watch people go out to the park or to anywhere really, and see what your customers are doing. Here you may see them having a specific pain point. So if it's, for example, and I'm making this up as we go now, using a car parking machine and being unable to do this, then you may be able to help them solve that problem. And then there's stuff like secondary sources. So you could be looking, in the case of ABC Limited, we may be looking at stuff like review sites for other brands that sell pets materials. The point that we're starting to get to here is that we want to understand what the jobs to be done are for our customers, which is a theory popularized by Clayton Christensen. which means that customers are not just buying products or services, they're hiring our product or services to achieve a specific goal, solve a problem, or fulfill a need. Now, these jobs to be done can come in lots of different forms, and I'm not going to speak through the questions you can ask here, but they can be functional, emotional, social, context, pain points, desired outcomes, or looking at the alternatives or competitors. Ultimately, we're looking to solve a problem for a human being. So in today's example of ABC Limited, you start doing some secondary research and you're scrolling through Instagram and you notice a bunch of folks making their own clothes to match with their dogs. And the comments are really, really positive, with folks all chatting about how they would love to do the same. So the job to be done here is there is a functional one, which is people want to be able to twin their clothing with their dogs. There's a societal one that they want to provide something that elevates the status of the dog walker while in the park, because they've got this matching sense with their dog. And they've got an emotional jobs to be done, which is they make the owner feel happy. Notice none of these jobs to be done are like about necessarily like our clothing is made from XYZ. They're far more emotional. They have other angles to them. So Joe does not need to get dressed in a pink TMM hoodie with his dog Eric. James, thank you very much. But what we do is we pop it into our strategy. So we can see here that we've got a problem that we solve. We want a person who's able to twin their clothing with their dog. They want to look great when they go to the park, when they're walking them, and they want to make their customers feel happy. Twinning is winning. Thanks, Mel. So next, who are we trying to help? So there's lots of different ways that we can think about who we're trying to help. And I'm hopefully not teaching everyone to suck eggs on this call. This is fundamental marketing stuff, but often we will describe the people we're trying to help in ways of personas or ideal customer profiles. There is nuance between these things, but fundamentally what we're trying to do is describe an individual who may or may not wish to buy our product or service. Now, the problem for this, most common problem with this, is that quite often folks will describe their personas, these folks that they would like to sell to, in terms of demographics. So you can see here there's a comparison, and I'm definitely not the first person to make this comparison, between Prince Charles or King Charles and Ozzy Osbourne, where you can see that essentially all of their demographics are the same, but of course they are very, very different people. And so what we need to do really is move beyond the idea of demographics when we're building the personas and into a place which is more useful. Now, this slide isn't particularly wonderful because the text is way too small on it. But what we're trying to do is break past this idea of demographics, still include them towards the end, but actually start to look at things like psychographics. So the values, what matters to them, what they expect from the brand, their buying behaviors. So why do they buy and what keeps them coming back? Product uses, emotional drivers, situational segments, all the stuff that we started to describe in our jobs to be done. Now, the place that this will lead us to is an idea of segments, because fundamentally, there's lots of people who may wish to, in our example, buy clothes that twin with their dogs. So what we need to do is establish an idea of segments. All a segment describes is that there are lots of people who may feel the same thing. They may wish to twin with their dog in this instance, but there will be a segment, a group of people within these people who feel the pain point that we've described, who will be most appropriate for us to try and reach with our marketing efforts. And often this is calculated in terms of the TAM, which is the total addressable market, or how many people you can actually reach, their spending power. So it may be that there's a bunch of folks who wish to twin with their dogs with the clothing, but they can't afford to do so, or they're not willing to pay the premium that ABC Limited would like them to. And then also elements of the ease of reach. So, for example, they may be really brand loyal already to another brand which produces these materials. So we may or may not choose to put our efforts there. What we're trying to do here is describe the folks that are easy to reach, who have the ability to pay for our products and in mass to be able to sustain our business. So in today's example, what we can see is that there may be different segments that we could reach. We could want to reach fashion forward pet owners who want to look, really value fashion. We could have status seeking dog lovers. So folks who really care about the status, or feel good pet parents. And these could be folks who just really want to feel great about how they're treating their pet. But as a result of looking at the total addressable market, so how many folks that we can target, the spending power and the ease of reach, what we've chosen to do for ABC Limited is focus on fashion forward pet owners. And these are style conscious individuals who take pride in their appearance and want their dog to look as stylish as they do. They want products that make them, both them and their dog, look cool and well coordinated. They're often active on social media, sharing photos of themselves and their dog. And their jobs to be done are they want their dog to look great and human look cool through the coordination. And they want to elevate the status of the dog walker in public. So we pop that again into the bare minimum strategy. The final element of the strategic elements is the idea that we're trying to build in the customer's mind and what we would like to offer. Now, I love this quote from Chris Anderson, who is the guy who runs TED. And in his book, The Official Tech Guide to Public Speaking, Chris Anderson says, the purpose of a talk is to build an idea in the audience's mind. It's a very bad paraphrase, but I think you kind of get the point. And to relate this to a marketing concept, what we're speaking about here is positioning. The process of establishing a memorable perception of a brand or product in the minds of target customers. So we are looking to help our customers understand what our brand actually does. This leads into a concept, and I'm going a little bit down a rabbit hole, so I'm going to take us back out in just 1 minute to an idea of salience, which is being the product or service that comes to mind when someone looks to buy the thing that you are selling. And this may be in a B2C example, so a very busy shelf and why people would choose your product, or in a B2B world, be their MarTech sort of thing. Another way of describing this, and probably a far simpler concept, is that a reminder that comes that our brands are quote unquote tiny things. And what this means is that our customers are often not walking around thinking about us day to day. They're not walking down the street thinking about the marketing meetup. But when it comes to thinking about marketing events, maybe there's a brain cell that tings and just goes, I need to come to the marketing meetup. Mark Ritson predisposes that you've got 3 brain cells dedicated to your brand to build positioning in the idea of in the mind of your customer. So what do you want those 3 brain cells to be? And you've got 2 tools in your armory here to describe your positioning. The first is your positioning statement, so a concise description of how a product or service you want it to appear. And then you've got distinctiveness, which is this idea of appearing as yourself, versus differentiation, which is appearing different from everyone else. Now, they're 2 concepts which I will touch upon here, but if you want further reading, then there's a great resource called The Power of You, which speaks about distinctive brand assets by Walk. And then there's How Brands Grow by Byron Sharp. So distinctiveness, what are the things that make us visually us? So if we're looking to build an idea of what our brand is in the mind of the customer, what are the things that make us us? What's our tone of voice and what are we for? So some examples, you may have Tiffany blue, which is a color that Tiffany own. You've got your logo like Manchester United. You may have Starbucks mugs. You may have the smell of Lush as you walk past it in the street, or Google's color palette as well. Differentiation, what are the things that make you different from the alternatives? How do you solve the problem differently? And what are you against? The thing here is that, like, when we speak about differentiation, a lot of people get hung up at the idea of being unique. What we don't need to be is unique. We just need to be different from the competition in relative terms. So it may be too small in this case, but you'll be able to see a comparison here between Asana and Monday. And what Monday have done is that they've chosen on the right-hand side to be differentiated on the idea of meeting requirements, on the ease of use, ease of admin, quality of support, ease of doing business with, and they say they are better than Asana in each of those things. Now, that's not to say that Monday.com own those things. That's to say that they have compared themselves in different ways against Asana. So in today's example, our positioning statement looks like ABC make dog clothing that lets the world know you come as a pair and look damn good doing it. In ABC Limited Clothing, you can be sure that you walk through the park with pride and that you and your best friend are putting your best foot forward. Here we've got ABC's logo. We've got the distinctiveness coming through the coordination of the clothing, and we've got a tagline for those who value their best friend. Yes, Sarah, that is cracking, actually. Surely that's best pour forward. I take your point. I'm going to change that positioning statement off the basis of that comment alone. So love that. Again, we can pop this into our bare minimum strategy. And what we can see, just to check in here, is we've got a goal at the top. We've got some jobs to be done. We've got some segments that we want to reach. We've got a positioning statement that makes it clear what we do and who for. And then we've got three assets. So two that make us distinctive and one that makes us differentiated. And Stephen, the Marketing Meetup community, is on fire today because Stephen says turns head and wags tails. Cracking work. Lucy is also an appreciation of that, Stephen. So great work. Let's head into the tactical stuff. So we've already started to build a very, very clear strategy, I think, at this point. But let's move into the tactical stuff. So there's a very, very important line to draw between strategy and tactics. And this is the thing which I think a lot of folks get hung up on a little bit. They jump into the tactics first, which is a shame because I've done this in the past. And when you do this, then ultimately, I think you end up spinning your wheels a little bit because you can just ping from tactic to tactic to tactic that fundamentally, in the end, mean that you spin your wheels because you're not really doing anything with any direction. Examples of tactics could be your TikToks, your Instagrams, your TV ads, or indeed your carrier pigeons, whatever they may be. An example that a lot of marketers fall into the trap of doing is saying, you know, we're going to do SEO on Monday, on Tuesday, we're going to do some Instagram, Wednesday, we're attending an event, on Thursday, I'm posting on LinkedIn, and Friday, well, you got to get down on Friday because that's what Rebecca Black says. But there you go. So that's great, David. Well, there we go. By giving some strategic direction to our tactics, then the things that we're aiming for are purpose and clarity with our tactics. We need to be able to give our tactics some clarity and purpose. Otherwise, we're just doing things. And like just doing things can sometimes work, can sometimes not work. But if you don't have that strategic direction behind it, fundamentally, you're going to lose out because you don't know whether you're being successful or not. So the best way that I've encountered, and the first funnel came out in like 1898. So this is not a new concept, but a marketing funnel is at least a beginning way to think about giving some purpose and clarity to your marketing tactics. So here we break it down into 5 stages: awareness, consideration, purchase, retention, and advocacy. So awareness is making people aware that your product or service exists. Consideration is once they're aware, then they can start to consider whether or not to buy from you. Purchase is making it easy to purchase. Retention is keeping the folks that you already have. And advocacy is turning them into folks who will speak about your product or service. Importantly for this model, a lot of marketing models, a lot of marketing funnels will forget about the retention and advocacy part. And for me as a marketer, then I think we really need to be thinking a lot more about retention and advocacy, because ultimately keeping the customers we have is a far more effective way to grow our businesses than just constantly churning through new folks. And what we can see here is that we start placing our activity against the respective marketing tactics that are available to us. So we can start breaking these down. And what we can also start to do is then place a goal against each of these tactics. And I'd recommend Burnett and Field here when we sort of speak about the long and short of it. I'll leave that there. What this means is with our marketing tactics, we're fundamentally able to move from this place of just saying we're going to do some SEO to placing it then against the marketing funnel, which says we're going to do some SEO for reasons of awareness. But even better than that, we can say to the rest of our team, we're going to do SEO for reasons of awareness, and we'll judge success by organic search growth. Ultimately, we've started to bring together rather than just a tactical awareness, we've also started to give it purpose and a goal next to it. In the case of ABC Limited, they've decided to do Instagram, which they're going to judge success by reach to start off with their clothing. Next, we're going to do some web traffic, some performance-based marketing to drive people to the website, and we're going to judge success by clicks. We're going to judge success on purchase by revenue, retention. We're going to create some dog walks, some group dog walks for folks who are matching their clothing, and we're going to judge that by the amount of folks who turn up. And then at the advocacy, we're going to see how many people are posting about our product. In Grace's case, Grace pops a question into the chat here, which is a great one, which is how about if your product has a long lifespan, e.g. 15 plus years, and is unlikely to purchase again until it breaks down? So the important thing to note here is that the marketing funnel presented here is just an example. The important thing that you can do once you've got this rough structure to be able to plan your activity is then customize what this funnel looks like for you. So in the example of a really long sales cycle, it may be that you need to do a lot more at the consideration phase and you're doing a lot more in-depth work and stuff like that. At the long lifespan example, it may be that you get folks, you don't put so much effort in the retention phase because you don't need to. Actually, what you do need is new customers. You need to customize this to your business. And Hugh has very generously said that he will help, which is just the spirit of the marketing meetup. What we can see here is that we can also choose where to place our energy in the same way as Grace is speaking about in the chat here. From the business perspective, when we know what our marketing goal is, we can start to have this idea of where we need to be placing our energy. So do you have an awareness problem? Do you have a consideration problem? Do you have a purchase problem? Do you have a retention advocacy or retention or advocacy problem? What we fundamentally need to do here is understand where we need to be placing our activity. And if you don't know, a great place to start is at the purchase stage and work backwards from consideration and awareness. Because if you get more people to purchase, then ultimately that's going to show you more results more quickly than just putting lots of people at the top of your funnel at the awareness phase. And so what we've done over the course of this sort of past 40 minutes is build a strategy which starts to make sense. So let's just quickly wrap up. What we've got here is today's example. So this is the place that we started with, which is we've got a small e-commerce business run in the spare time. It sells high quality designer pet wear sold on the basis of the product. It's been established for 2 years and they were saying about selling to all pet owners. But you know what we've done together today is actually build something which is far more significant, far more directive, gives us the opportunity to judge our success against goals, know who we're reaching, and be able to judge whether or not we're doing a good job. So, bare minimum marketing strategy. Start with a business or marketing goal, work with the problem you're trying to solve, who you're trying to help, the idea that you would like to build in their brain, and then work to the funnel. Thank you very much for listening. That's the presentation element done, and happy to take any questions at all.
Bravo. Joe, that was great. Can I just say that if the marketing meetup doesn't work out, that we don't go into the pet clothing business. I'm not sold on the idea. I think it's wonderful, but I'm not sure how profitable it's going to be. I've got a few questions before we jump. Well, a couple of questions before we jump into the Q&A. You love a framework. I'm more of a free thinker, throw ideas at the wall type of person, which is why we work so beautifully together. But I think a lot of people often start companies to solve their own problems. So I can imagine somebody making some clothes for their dog, and then it just happens to match, and they think, oh, this maybe is a thing. Lots of people are commenting on it, and so you end up with a gut feel around something that could make a really good business. And I'm guessing a lot of businesses start that way, um, and they don't have any data to back it up. Like, uh, is that something that's still valuable in your mind, or do you think it always has to have that bit of research done?
No, absolutely not. So, thank you for asking the question because it's easy to overblow this sometimes. I think, particularly when you're working in a small business, there is I use the term founder's prerogative, which means to say that, like, um, I have experience working without a strategy and I have experience working with a strategy. And I know for me that working with a strategy is far better than working without because you have that clarity. But particularly when you're at the beginning of a business, particularly when you're figuring things out, then there has to be that ability to shift and try new things and stuff like that. And so, yes, a strategy is important. It really is. But as Mel says in the chat, it's all up here and taps the side of your head. Sometimes you've got that prerogative to try things out. I think where things tend to go wrong is when you're doing that all the time over an extended period of time. Like if you're shifting who you're trying to reach, or you change your tactics every too often, then ultimately you're not giving things the space to breathe, the space to be successful. And so I think absolutely acknowledge that a strategy is good. Also acknowledge that you can change things. Both is fine, and shift it as you need to.
And where do you see that that point at which you reevaluate? So
Mhm.
you've done the work, you've done the homework, you've done the research, and you've put a strategy into place, and you're a couple of months in, and things are going completely the opposite direction. Things are failing fast.
Yeah.
You're worried about your job. Like, how and when do you reevaluate these things? And is it a case of like, well, change one thing at a time, or do you go, right, well, this is awful, scrap it all, let's start again? Like, what's your, this must happen to some people.
Yeah, I tend to with Helen, who's in the chat here, says you got to give your strategy time. Don't change your positioning every 6 months. Learn that the hard way. And I think what we can say is that if we've built our strategy on um, a series of sensible things, so whether that's research, whether that's founders' prerogative, whether that's the acknowledgement of a really significant need, then the strategic elements, so when we're speaking about the goal, when we're speaking about the problem we're trying to solve, when we're speaking about the people we're trying to help, and indeed the positioning, then I would try not to flex with those things, certainly within a couple of months. Give it 6 if you can. Tactically, then we have to be reactive if we would like to be. Um, of course, there's nuance in this answer. If things are going horribly wrong and you're offending everyone and you're having a horrible time and everything's on fire, don't continue offending everyone for 6 months, like just because you need to stick to the strategy. But, for the most part, like we're not going to be building an idea in the customer's brain of what our product or service is if we've only been doing it for 2 months. Like, to give an example, and this was a silly thing, but yesterday James and I were on a call. I'm addressing you now, James, as for the benefit of the community. And we were speaking with someone we know quite well. And we were speaking about all things. And then I just happened to mention that we're running a conference. Now, this person is someone who is in the community. This is someone who we know pretty well. And they went, "You're running a conference?" And like, it's like, yeah. And, this is someone who probably should have received that message, but they haven't. And so we need to be able to like have that discussion regularly. And this is, I think it's just a nice example of how these things work over the course of time.
Yeah, and I think so for the folks listening in, Joe and I have worked together for many, many years, and the big turning point in the business was when we went and locked ourselves in a rural barn in the Worcestershire countryside with no phone reception for 2 days and thrashed all this out. And I think the strategy that we came up with largely still fits today. Like the values that we believe in and the mission that we've got is the same. The actual things that we're doing are different. They change.
Yeah,
But ultimately that strategy has been sort of fairly solid. But it's taken a long time to really sort of show its value. So
absolutely.
yeah, that's great. I'm conscious we're rattling through time. There was a question that came in on LinkedIn as well from Mel, who I've seen. She was in the last comment that I actually thought was quite a relevant one for a lot of our audience, which is around specific tips for freelancers who are typically doing everything themselves. They're DIYers. Is there anything that you've seen people do really well, or an approach that you've got for freelancers?
I think the thing which I emphasized at the beginning about communication with other stakeholders is probably the biggest difference in this case. I think the framework is the framework. I kind of think it works in most situations. It ignores a lot of nuance. So I haven't spent a lot of time speaking about reporting, for example, which is an important part of our role. Um, but I think for freelancers, etc., I think the framework still applies. But you can sit down and you can probably do it for yourself in 30 minutes rather than consulting with 5 or 6 stakeholders in your organization in the creation of this. It does feel like a really great opportunity, though, just to re-emphasize that point that, like, please don't create this strategy by yourself. Like, it has to be something that's done with relevant stakeholders because at the end of the day, we need them to buy into it. We need them to understand why we're doing what we're doing. And if we've got these agreed goals, then we can benchmark ourselves against it. So please, 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 if you're a freelancer, you can do it yourself. But if you're not, if you're working in a team, please look to involve the rest of your organization. It'll just make the world of difference.
Yeah, and certainly if you are on your own, so I was running a video agency on my own, I would come and bounce things off you. I had a couple of people that were running their own companies, and I would bounce sort of strategic ideas off them as well. And so yeah, don't try and work it all out in your own head. Just talking about these things quite often helps. The final question that came in on LinkedIn was from Ian, who talked about doing effective audience research on small budgets. And are we going to get a visitor?
Yeah. Come this way, Dan. This is my daughter, everyone. So this is Annie. So Annie, we've got to be nice and quiet. But you say hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. There we go.
The chat is about to light up.
Yeah, yeah. Right, you going to find mummy?
So yeah, you've got a small budget. Whether you're a big company or not, sometimes you're not allotted, a load of money to go off and do research. It's maybe not seen as valuable in the stakeholders' eyes. What would be your approach? What's the easiest way to pick your customers' brains or
I think we can go about it in lots of ways. So the first will be, literally, whether you can go out on LinkedIn and say, look, can I pick your brains for 20 minutes and I will give you £20 or something like that, into your LinkedIn feed. You can observe people in their natural environment, this ethnographic stuff. When we speak about secondary sources, we can look at Instagram comments, we can look at reviews for Amazon, etc., etc., etc. There are so many low cost ways. I mean, if you want to go deeper, there are survey platforms you can look at. So things like a test like YouGov, which will help you put together surveys and stuff like that. Um, I myself have just done a market research project for a company. I've just done 17 45-minute interviews with folks, and I've learned so much about their products and service and industry. And that's 17 just outreaches to folks that will fundamentally change how this company markets themselves. Like there's a bit of elbow grease, there's a bit of hard work involved in it, but you can absolutely do it at low cost. You can do it at a high cost too, but you can do it at low cost for sure.
Yeah, that was really interesting. Actually, we had a talk at our Birmingham marketing meetup by a chap called Addison Clark, who's a great marketer to follow, and he was talking about the importance of customer feedback, so like the reviews and picking out keywords to help define and direct your strategy as well. So trying to understand, oh, the products arrived really quickly. This is wonderful. And it's like, okay, so the speed that these things are delivered is a really important thing. And, the quality was, if lots and lots of people are talking about quality, then maybe that's something that becomes a strategic sort of positioning piece. Uh,
100%.
so yeah, no, that's great. Okay, jumping into the Q&A, we have an anonymous attendee who says, "What can you do if you work in a company where it's backwards?" Now I see why you're anonymous. And business goals aren't clear. How can you influence those stakeholders to define their strategy? I think this is possibly one of the most important questions.
100%. First of all, can I ask a favor of the community, which is a dad point? If anyone took screenshots when Annie was there, please don't post them on social. We don't usually do that thing, which is a very dad point, but I hope you don't mind.
An important one. Well done, mate.
Yeah. When it comes to this question, which is what can you do if you work in a company where it's backwards and the business goals aren't clear, how can you influence the stakeholders to define their strategy? I think it comes down to a conversation. And I know this is a bit of a cop-out answer, but I do think it's the best answer that we can possibly give, which is that we have to be able to have a conversation with these folks who are setting a business direction. And if they're not, then we need to help them. We need to help them with great questions that help them understand the thing that you need to do and the thing that you need from them to be able to do your job well. And so, asking a question of the CEO, of your line manager, what are we going to try and do this next year? What do we want to achieve? And it may be that they start off the conversation by saying, well, we probably want to grow. And you go, cool. So any idea how much we want to grow by? And they go, well, 10%. And you go, cool. So can we say that a goal for my marketing activity over the next year is 10%? And they'll go, yeah, or no. And you start from that point. But I think if you can start to bring in that conversation, that generosity, that helpfulness, then you start to build something which is built not just on your own goals, but their goals too.
I think also encouraging the the availability of different people in the business as well. So going out with salespeople and listening to calls that you might be having, or going into a shop or wherever these things are sold or products are used, and just listening, I think is also a really valuable thing, because you'll be looking at it as a marketer, not as somebody who's trying to sell something or who's trying to deliver a product or service. So I
Sure,
think that's
for sure.
always
I just
useful.
want to pick up on what Patrick said in the chat here, because he said, last year I did a planning process with a company and interviewed 18 senior execs, board members, communications folk, marketing, salespeople, and I got 18 definition of the company business objectives. Just showing them back verbatim caused them to focus on the objectives and goals. And I think that's a lovely thing. And the fact that you did that, Patrick, like I think elevates marketing as well in the organization, because you are seen as the glue to bring those things together, which I think
Yeah.
is brilliant.
Bravo, Patrick. We applaud you. It's good. It's good work. We've still got hundreds of people on the call at the moment. I'm conscious that we're at time. But did you want to take another one or two questions, Joe? How
If
are people feeling?
if yeah, like let's do an energy check. How are we feeling from 1 to 10 in the chat? Are we okay? Like, yeah,
We're
wicked.
at 10. Oh, we've got some people that are 10. Let's go. Come on then. Look at that. Hang on. There's
Cool.
lots of happy people. Okay, so Carl has asked, what are your thoughts? He's a solo marketer on outsourcing strategy in part to an agency and working with them on it rather than doing it in-house.
Um,
I have an opinion on that as well.
yeah, it's funny because I'm going to do a check on myself because my first instinct is, oh God, don't do it, which is like the first thing as I read that question. But then the second part of that is if they are experienced in building a marketing strategy and they are there to help your organization and they are there to help in a very sincere sense, then there is no problem leaning on that expertise to help you do that. To give the example, like I recently did that market research project, which is part of a strategic review. So, they are leaning on a freelancer or consultant to do that. Um, I think there's a couple of watch outs, and one is, very simply that you need to be aware of the relationship, which is if they are part of your strategy, they undoubtedly have a vested interest, and one would hope that it's a good one. But if they're part of your strategy, they may build themselves into that more. So you just need to be aware of that. But as Kat says, sometimes an external perspective can be useful. So I think embrace it, but don't necessarily, sort of take wholehearted, retain that responsibility for yourself because ultimately you are there to deliver it. You will be accountable for it in a way that they won't. And so, ultimately, this is your responsibility, your accountability.
Yeah, I think to sort of add on to that, you find some amazing agencies and amazing consultants that have been through this process so many times that they know how to, they've got the building blocks in place already, which is really useful. So you might not have the skill set within your business to do it properly, but what you have got that the consultants and the agencies won't have is the deep understanding of what your business does, how it does it. It's their job to extract that to build the strategy. So it takes both in my you can't just go outsource, forget about it, and come back with a strategy. I don't think that works. But if you've got somebody who's willing to get fully into the business and understand it properly, then you can come up with some great results. Um, so yeah. What other good questions have we got? Let me refresh the most upvoted ones. Do you have any tips to share objectives with senior leaderships rather than just them trying to put the objectives on you? Some leadership will just make it sales focused when the marketing evidence doesn't show just sales works.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, how do you feel about that one?
Um, I, again, I think I am this person who will often speak about this importance of the communication two ways. And so, if your objectives are coming in an email from someone, then I think you still have the right to understand the steps that will take you along the way. And like it may well be that you can feed back to them and sort of say, look, the sales target is what the sales target is, and I think we need to do this thing to reach that sales target. In my experience, this is these tactics, these strategies, etc., etc. I think it has to be a two-way conversation. And I appreciate that in some cultures that will be very tricky. I'm not trying to be naive here. Um, but I think in the best case scenario, then one has to be trying to make this a conversation rather than business objectives held up on high and without any sort of chance to sort of speak about how marketing will help the business achieve those things.
Yeah, I think it's quite a common theme I'm seeing through the questions. Like one of the next ones is around encouraging people to stick to one goal and one strategy and move away from knee-jerk tactics, which in a heavily sales-led company, as this person is talking about, is where they're very tactical. You can appreciate that if something's selling well, as a salesperson, you've got a target, you're drawn to it.
Mm.
Um, but I guess like how do you keep people on that straight and narrow?
I want to give there's an idealistic answer, right? Which is there is a marketing strategy, and we are going to stick to the marketing strategy because that's what we agreed up front. And like in theory, building a marketing strategy that has buy-in from the rest of the organization gives you the best chance to stick to these things that you've agreed with the rest of the organization with some clarity, etc., etc. But there's also a practical, realistic sort of worldview, which is sometimes there are organizations which don't sustain these strategies, which do jump from tactics to tactics. And I would say that's probably the majority of cases. All I can say with this talk really is we are giving ourselves the best chance. We are giving ourselves the best chance. We're giving the organizations that we're working for the best chance to make the most from marketing activity. There will be some organizations, and I'm sorry to say it, that regardless of what you do, will flip flop from different target markets to different tactics to XYZ. And in that situation, you have a choice, and I say this with the knowledge of how difficult the market is right now, but you have a choice, in the company that you choose to be part of, how one chooses to go about educating these folks, how one goes about taking them on a journey of understanding what marketing is. I think just to summarize that there is a practical answer, there's a realistic answer, there's an idealistic answer. What we're speaking about here is about giving ourselves the best chance to have marketing do our best work. In some situations, I'm sorry to say that won't be possible, at which point it's an individual responsibility, which is sucky, but I don't want to sort of just show the nuance.
No, that's brilliant. Okay, I think we round things up. I just wanted to once again say a massive thanks to Storyblock. As I say, they've got a bunch of other webinars which you can scan here. We'll do that follow up. And next week we're continuing this theme of strategy, and we're going to have Daniel Priestley on, who's going to be talking about business and sales strategy and where marketing fits into the wider business strategy. So I think that's going to be a really interesting session. He's got lots of great content out there. Joe will be hosting the session. I think that'll be a very popular one and a good opportunity to ask him some questions. So thanks again to the hundreds of you that have logged in today and watched it. We really appreciate you, and yeah, we will see you on another webinar very soon. All right, take care, folks. Thanks again.